The last rays of sunlight filtered through the tall windows of Mexico City's National Auditorium as the cleaning crew finished their evening rounds. Most had already left, but one young woman lingered in the main concert hall, moving quietly between rows and picking up forgotten programs. Anna was 23, with warm brown eyes that seemed too old for her young face. She worked quickly but carefully, respectful of the grand space around her. This auditorium had hosted the world's greatest musicians, and even empty, it held a kind of magic that Anna could feel in her bones. When the last row was clean, she stood for a moment looking toward the empty stage. The cleaning supervisor had already gone home, leaving Anna to lock up. She glanced at her watch, still 30 minutes before she needed to catch her bus home. The magnificent grand piano stood center stage, its black surface gleaming under a single spotlight someone had forgotten to turn off. Anna bit her lip, fighting the urge that came to her every night when she found herself alone in this space. "Just once," she whispered to herself, setting down her cleaning cart. She walked slowly up the side stairs to the stage, her footsteps echoing in the empty hall. The piano seemed to call to her as it did every night. Usually she just stood near it, imagining how it would feel to play. But tonight something pulled her closer. Anna didn't come from a world of private music lessons or concert recitals. She'd grown up in a small apartment where her grandmother had once kept an old upright piano, teaching Anna simple melodies until arthritis twisted her fingers too badly to play. After her grandmother died, the piano was sold to pay medical bills. But Anna had never stopped loving music. For her 20th birthday, her mother had saved enough to buy a second-hand electronic keyboard missing several keys. On this humble instrument, Anna taught herself to play, watching videos online and practicing late into the night after long shifts cleaning offices, restaurants, and now, the concert hall. As she approached the piano, her heart beat faster. She had never dared to touch it before. This wasn't just any piano, but a concert grand worth more than she would earn in 10 years. Anna stood beside it, her fingers hovering just above the keys without touching them. She began to move her hands, playing an imaginary piece, hearing the music in her mind as clearly as if the piano were really singing beneath her touch. Her body swayed gently as she lost herself in the silent melody, eyes closed, lips moving slightly as she counted the rhythm to herself. She didn't hear the back door of the auditorium open. Maestro Richard Harmon paused in the shadows, watching the curious scene before him. At 56, the visiting conductor had led orchestras across Europe and was known for his exacting standards and little patience for anything less than excellence. He'd returned to retrieve his forgotten baton, but the sight of this cleaning woman pretending to play his piano stopped him cold. His first reaction was irritation. Who was she to approach an instrument like this? Did she understand its value, its significance? The presumption bothered him. He stepped forward deliberately, his footsteps echoing loudly. Anna's eyes snapped open. She jumped back from the piano, her face flooding with color as she spotted the famous conductor walking down the center aisle. "I'm sorry," she said quickly, reaching for a cloth in her pocket as if she'd been dusting. "I was just finishing up." Harmon climbed the steps to the stage, his expression unreadable. "That's not what it looked like to me," he said, his Spanish carrying a slight German accent. Anna lowered her eyes. "I didn't touch it, sir. I promise. No, you were playing an imaginary piano." There was no humor in his voice, just cool observation. "Why?" She hesitated, embarrassed to explain. "It helps me remember the music." "What music?" he asked, his tone suggesting he doubted she knew anything about music at all. "Bach's Prelude in C major," she answered quietly. "I've been teaching myself." Something in her answer made Harmon look at her more carefully. Not many people would recognize that piece, let alone someone without formal training. His curiosity stirred despite himself. "Teaching yourself how? On what?" Anna shifted uncomfortably under his gaze. "I have a keyboard at home. It's not much, but it works, and I watch videos online." Harmon studied her for a long moment. He'd met countless musicians in his career, prodigies groomed from childhood, conservatory graduates with perfect technique, virtuosos who devoted every waking hour to their craft. This young woman, with her cleaning uniform and worn shoes, didn't belong in that world, and yet something about the way she had moved her hands, the expression on her face as she played her silent music. "What's your name?" he asked. "Anna," she replied. Without another word, Harmon moved to the piano bench and sat down. He played a short, complex passage, his fingers dancing over the keys with practiced precision. Then he stood and stepped aside. "Play that," he said. It wasn't a request. Anna's eyes widened. "Sir, I can't or won't." There was a challenge in his voice now. "I've never played on a real piano like this," she explained, her voice barely above a whisper. "Only my keyboard at home." "Then consider this an opportunity." Anna stood frozen, caught between fear and longing. To touch this beautiful instrument, to hear real music come from her fingers instead of the imagined sounds in her head. Slowly, she approached the bench. She sat down carefully, adjusting her posture as she'd seen pianists do in videos. Her hands hovered over the keys, trembling slightly. "I'll probably do it wrong," she warned. "Most likely," Harmon agreed, crossing his arms. Anna took a deep breath and began to play, not the passage Harmon had demonstrated. She knew her limitations, but the Bach piece she'd been practicing in her mind. Her fingers pressed the keys gingerly at first, startled by how differently they felt from her plastic keyboard at home. The sound filled the concert hall, richer and more alive than anything she'd ever created. She made mistakes, hesitating at some transitions, pressing too hard on some notes, too softly on others. But as she continued, something changed. Her body relaxed, her fingers found their confidence, and the music began to flow more naturally. Harmon watched with growing surprise. Her technique was untrained, certainly. She lacked the polish that came from years of professional instruction. But there was something else there, something rare that couldn't be taught. A natural understanding of the music's soul, an intuitive sense of its emotional heart. When Anna finished, she quickly withdrew her hands from the keys, as if afraid she might have damaged something precious. "I'm sorry," she said again, rising from the bench. "I know it wasn't good." Harmon didn't immediately respond. He was reassessing everything about this young woman. Her worn uniform, her calloused hands, the way she carried herself with a quiet dignity despite her obvious discomfort. "How long have you been playing?" he finally asked. 3 years on my keyboard. But it's missing some keys, so I have to imagine them. "And no lessons? No formal training?" Anna shook her head. "We couldn't afford them. I just watch videos and try to copy what I see." Harmon nodded slowly, his mind racing ahead. The symphony he was conducting had a special segment planned for tomorrow evening, a showcase of local talent. One of the pianists had fallen ill, leaving an empty slot in the program. The sensible thing would be to simply remove the piece, but Harmon had built his career on occasional calculated risks. "Tomorrow morning I'm rehearsing with the orchestra at 9, he said. "Be here at 7:30. Anna's brow furrowed in confusion. "My shift doesn't start until—" "Not for cleaning," Harmon interrupted. "I want you to play for me again." "Play for you? Why?" "Because," he said slowly, "there's something there. Something rough and unpolished, but real." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "I don't offer opportunities lightly, Anna. Don't waste this one." Her eyes widened as his meaning sank in. "You can't be serious." "I rarely joke about music," he replied. 7:30. Don't be late. And bring whatever piece moves you most." As Harmon turned to leave, Anna called after him, her voice stronger now. "Maestro, why me?" He paused at the edge of the stage. "In my profession, we hear thousands of technically perfect performances. But true feeling? That's much harder to find." He looked back at her with newfound respect. Music isn't just about hitting the right notes. It's about having something to say. After he left, Anna remained seated at the piano for a long time, her mind spinning with possibilities she had never dared to imagine. She touched the keys again gently, as if to make sure they were real. Tomorrow she would return, not with a mop and broom, but with her music. Whether it led anywhere or not, for one morning, she would be a pianist, not a cleaner. For one morning, her grandmother's dream would live again through her. The thought both terrified and thrilled her as she finally rose, turned off the forgotten spotlight, and headed home to practice on her humble keyboard until dawn. Anna hardly slept that night. After catching the last bus home, she'd rushed into the small apartment she shared with her mother and younger brother, heading straight for her keyboard without even stopping to change out of her work uniform. "You're home late," her mother said, looking up from the sewing she did for extra money. Lines of worry creased her face. "Everything okay?" Anna's hands hovered over her keyboard, her mind still replaying the feeling of the grand piano's keys beneath her fingers. "Something happened today, Mom, something incredible." She told her mother about Maestro Harmon and his unexpected invitation. As she spoke, her mother's expression shifted from concern to cautious hope. "This conductor, he really thinks you have talent?" she asked, setting aside her sewing. "I don't know what he thinks," Anna admitted, "but he wants to hear me play again." Her mother crossed the small living room and sat beside Anna on the worn couch that doubled as her bed. "Your grandmother always said you had a gift. Even as a little girl, you could hear a song once and play it back." Anna smiled at the memory. Her grandmother had been the one who first placed her hands on piano keys, guiding her tiny fingers over simple melodies. "I wish she could see this." "She can," her mother said softly, brushing a strand of hair from Anna's face. "Now practice. Show this fancy conductor that my daughter doesn't need expensive lessons to make beautiful music." Through the night, Anna played until her fingers ached and her brother grumbled about the noise. Her keyboard was nothing like the concert grand. Plastic keys with uneven resistance, missing notes she had to imagine. A tinny sound that couldn't capture the richness of a real piano. But it was all she had. She chose Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, the piece that had first made her fall in love with piano when she heard it at a free outdoor concert years ago. It was beyond her technical ability, but something about its emotional depth spoke to her heart. When she finally collapsed into exhausted sleep around 3 a.m., her dreams were filled with music and concert halls. Morning came too quickly. Anna woke with a start, momentarily confused by the early hour before remembering her appointment. Panic fluttered in her stomach as she rushed to get ready, selecting her nicest clothes, simple but clean, and pulling her hair back neatly. "You look beautiful," her mother said, pressing a small package into her hands. "I made you breakfast to take with you." Anna's throat tightened. "What if I make a fool of myself, Mama? What if he was just being kind last night?" Her mother squeezed her shoulders firmly. "Then you come home and keep playing because you love it." "But I don't think that's what will happen." The bus ride to the National Auditorium felt both too long and too short. Anna clutched her worn backpack containing the dog-eared sheet music she'd printed from free websites and taught herself to read. The morning sun was just beginning to warm the city streets as she walked quickly from the bus stop to the backstage entrance. The security guard recognized her, but looked confused by her early arrival and different clothes. "You're not on cleaning duty today?" "I have a meeting with Maestro Harmon," Anna said, the words still sounding unbelievable to her own ears. The guard raised his eyebrows but let her pass. "Main rehearsal hall," he said. "They're setting up now." Anna's heart pounded as she made her way through the familiar corridors that somehow felt different now. She wasn't here to clean or to stay invisible. She was here to be seen, to be heard. She paused at the rehearsal hall door, gathering her courage. Through the small window, she could see musicians unpacking instruments, chatting casually as they prepared for rehearsal. These were professionals, people who had dedicated their lives to music. And there at the center stood Maestro Harmon reviewing scores with a violinist. Anna almost turned and ran. What had seemed magical last night now felt like madness in the harsh light of morning. She didn't belong here among these trained musicians. She was just a cleaning woman with an old keyboard and impossible dreams. But before she could retreat, the door swung open and Maestro Harmon stood before her. "You're early," he said, checking his watch. "Good." Anna nodded, unable to find her voice. The maestro gestured for her to enter, and she stepped into the rehearsal space, acutely aware of curious glances from the orchestra members. "This way," Harmon said, leading her to the piano at the side of the room. It wasn't the concert grand from last night, but still finer than anything Anna had played. "Warm up while we finish setting up." He turned to walk away, but Anna's question stopped him. "Why are you doing this?" she asked quietly. "Why me?" Harmon considered her for a moment. "Because when you played last night, you weren't trying to impress anyone. You were simply speaking through the music." His expression softened slightly. "That's surprisingly rare." Left alone at the piano, Anna gently touched the keys, testing their weight and response. Several musicians watched her with undisguised curiosity. She heard whispers. "Who is she? Is she the replacement for tonight?" Taking a deep breath, Anna began her warm-up with simple scales, feeling the instrument respond to her touch. It was better than her keyboard at home, though not as magnificent as the concert grand. As her confidence grew, she transitioned into Bach's Prelude, the piece she'd played last night. Conversations around her gradually quieted as more musicians paused to listen. Anna kept her focus on the keys, losing herself in the familiar melody. When she finished, she looked up to find Maestro Harmon standing nearby, arms crossed, studying her with an intensity that made her nervous. "The Chopin Nocturne," he said. "Play it for me." Anna hesitated. "It's not perfect yet. I'm still working on the middle section. I didn't ask for perfect. I asked you to play." Taking another deep breath, Anna began Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. Unlike Bach's more structured piece, this composition required emotional depth and nuance. Anna closed her eyes, thinking of her grandmother, of late nights practicing by the glow of a single lamp, of dreams deferred but never abandoned. Her technique wasn't flawless. Her lack of formal training showed in how she handled some of the more complex passages, but there was something in her playing, a raw honesty, an emotional truth that made even the professional musicians stop to listen. When she reached the difficult middle section, her fingers faltered slightly. She pushed through, focusing on the feeling of the piece rather than technical perfection. As the final notes faded, she opened her eyes to find the rehearsal hall completely silent. Maestro Harmon stood very still, his expression unreadable. The orchestra members watched, waiting for his response. Anna's hands trembled slightly as she folded them in her lap. "You've never performed before?" Harmon finally asked. Anna shook her head. "Only at home. For my family." He nodded slowly. "There's a great deal you need to learn about technique. Your fingering is inconsistent. Your tempo wavers." Each criticism hit Anna like a physical blow. "But," he continued, "there's something there. Something real." He turned to address the orchestra. "As you know, Rosa Vega has withdrawn from tonight's showcase due to illness. This is Anna. She will be taking Rosa's place in the program." A murmur rippled through the musicians. Anna's mouth fell open in shock. "Tonight on stage? I can't possibly." "You can and you will," Harmon interrupted. "We'll rehearse your piece this morning." He checked his watch again. "You have 9 hours until the performance. Make them count." One of the violinists, an older woman with silver-streaked hair, stepped forward. "Maestro, with all due respect, we don't know anything about this young woman. Rosa Vega is a conservatory graduate. So was every other pianist in the showcase," Harmon replied evenly. "Don't you think our audience might appreciate something different?" "But the reputation of the symphony is my concern," Harmon finished firmly. "Anna will perform tonight." As the debate continued around her, Anna sat frozen at the piano. Perform tonight? In front of a real audience? The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. She thought of her mother's words that morning. "Show this fancy conductor that my daughter doesn't need expensive lessons to make beautiful music." "I'll do it," she said suddenly, her voice quiet but steady. Harmon nodded, a hint of approval in his eyes. "Good. Now let's work." The next 3 hours were the most intense of Anna's life. Harmon was demanding, stopping her repeatedly to correct her technique, refine her interpretation, adjust her tempo. He pushed her harder than anyone ever had, expecting a level of precision she hadn't known she was capable of. "Again," he would say after each attempt. "But this time don't just play the notes. Tell the story." By the time they took a break, Anna's fingers were sore and her mind was swimming with new information. But something was happening. Her playing was changing, growing, becoming more deliberate without losing the natural emotion that had caught Harmon's attention. As the orchestra members dispersed for lunch, the silver-haired violinist approached Anna. "I'm Laura," she said, offering a bottle of water. "Your hands will cramp if you don't stay hydrated." "Thank you," Anna said gratefully. "I'm sorry to disrupt your program." Laura studied her thoughtfully. "Harmon doesn't take chances like this. If he believes in you, there must be something special there." She smiled slightly. "Just breathe tonight. The music knows what to do if you let it." As Anna sipped the water, she gazed around the rehearsal hall. 24 hours ago, she had been cleaning this room. Now she was preparing to perform on its stage. Whatever happened tonight, her life had already changed. "Back to work," Harmon called, returning to the piano. "We have much to do before tonight." Anna straightened her shoulders and returned to the piano. Fear still fluttered in her stomach, but alongside it now was something else. Determination. She placed her fingers on the keys and began to play once more, her music filling the room with possibility. The afternoon passed in a blur of repetition, correction, and rare moments of praise from Maestro Harmon. By 4 o'clock, Coming from him, it felt like the highest praise. Anna nodded, suddenly unable to speak past the lump in her throat. The wardrobe room is down that hallway, he continued, pointing. They're expecting you. In the wardrobe room, Anna found a middle-aged woman sorting through garment bags. You must be our surprise pianist, the woman said warmly. I'm Gabriella. Maestro Harmon said you needed something for tonight's performance. She pulled out a simple but elegant black dress with 3/4 sleeves. This should fit. Not too flashy, but stage appropriate. Anna touched the fabric hesitantly. It looked expensive. I've never worn anything like this. First time for everything, Gabriella replied with a wink. There's a changing room through that door. The dress fit perfectly, its simple lines flattering without being distracting. When Anna emerged, Gabriella nodded approvingly. Beautiful. Now let me do something with your hair. With gentle hands, Gabriella twisted Anna's hair into a simple but elegant updo. There. Professional, but still you. Looking in the mirror, Anna barely recognized herself. Gone was the cleaning woman in her gray uniform. In her place stood someone who looked like she belonged on stage. Thank you, she whispered. Break a leg tonight, Gabriella said, squeezing her hand. That means good luck. With 2 hours before the performance, Anna found a quiet corner backstage to collect her thoughts. She tried to practice the breathing exercises Harmon had suggested for nerves, but her mind kept racing ahead to the moment she would walk onto that stage. A text message from her brother arrived. Mama is telling everyone on the bus about you. So embarrassing. But cool, I guess. Anna smiled despite her nerves. Then another message came from an unknown number. It's Laura. Maestro gave me your number. Remember, the music knows what to do. Trust it. As 7 o'clock approached, the backstage area began filling with performers and crew. Anna watched from her corner as the other showcase pianists arrived. Conservatory students in formal attire, who carried themselves with practiced confidence. They noticed her immediately, exchanging curious glances. One of them, a young man with wire-rimmed glasses, approached her directly. You're the last-minute replacement? He asked, his tone somewhere between curious and suspicious. Anna nodded, wishing she could disappear. Which conservatory are you from? I'm not, Anna admitted. I work here, or I did. As part of the cleaning staff, his eyebrows shot up. You're joking. No, he studied her with newfound interest. What are you playing? Chopin. The Nocturne in E-flat major. Brave choice for someone without formal training, he remarked, though without obvious malice. I'm David, by the way. Anna. David glanced at the other pianists who were still watching them. Look, they're going to be weird about this. Harmon choosing an untrained pianist over any of the dozens of qualified students in this city. It's unusual. I know, Anna said quietly. I don't really understand it either. Well, good luck, David said, offering a small smile. Shake things up a bit. As he walked away, Anna felt a strange sense of calm settling over her. She didn't belong here. That much was obvious to everyone. But somehow that knowledge was freeing. She had nothing to lose and no reputation to protect. At 7:30, the stage manager gathered all the showcase performers for final instructions. The event would feature 8 young musicians, 7 carefully selected from the city's top music programs, and Anna. You'll each have approximately 10 minutes, the manager explained. There will be a brief introduction before your performance. Any questions? Anna raised her hand hesitantly. Where should we go after we perform? There are seats reserved for you in the front row, the manager replied. You'll be recognized again during the final applause. As the other performers chatted amongst themselves, Anna stood apart, focusing on her breathing and mentally reviewing her piece. She had played it so many times today that her fingers could find the notes even without the piano. At 10 minutes to 8, Maestro Harmon appeared backstage in his formal conducting attire. He spoke briefly with each performer, offering last-minute advice or encouragement. When he reached Anna, he studied her transformed appearance with approval. You look the part. Now you must play it. What if I forget something? What if I make a mistake? The questions tumbled out before she could stop them. You will make mistakes, Harmon said bluntly. Everyone does. The audience rarely notices unless you show it on your face. He adjusted his cuffs with precise movements. Tonight isn't about technical perfection. It's about music, about feeling. That's why you're here. The house lights dimmed, signaling 5 minutes until the start of the performance. Through the curtains, Anna could hear the murmur of the audience settling into their seats. Somewhere out there, her mother and brother were watching, waiting to see her step onto this stage not as a cleaner but as a musician. Places. Everyone, the stage manager called quietly. The showcase would begin with an orchestral piece conducted by Harmon, followed by the student performances. Anna was scheduled to perform last, a position usually reserved for the most accomplished musician. As the orchestra members took their places on stage, Laura caught Anna's eye and gave her an encouraging nod. The first notes of the opening piece filled the hall, and the evening's performance began. Anna stood in the wings, her heart pounding, waiting for her moment to step into a spotlight she had never imagined could be hers. "Remember why you play?" Harmon had told her during their final rehearsal. "Not for the audience. Not for me. Not even for your family. Play because the music lives in you and must find its way out." As the concert progressed and her turn grew closer, Anna closed her eyes and thought of her grandmother's hands guiding hers over piano keys long ago. She thought of late nights practicing on her broken keyboard, of melodies that had kept her company through years of early mornings and long shifts. Whatever happened next, for 10 minutes tonight she would not be invisible, she would be heard. Anna watched from the wings as each young musician took their turn on stage. They were all remarkably talented, their performances polished by years of training. The audience responded with enthusiastic applause after each piece, occasionally rising to their feet for particularly impressive displays of skill. With each performance, Anna's anxiety grew. These were real musicians who belonged on this stage. Their fingers moved with confidence and precision she could only dream of achieving. What had she been thinking agreeing to this? David, the pianist who had spoken to her earlier, finished his technically flawless performance of a Liszt piece to thunderous applause. As he exited the stage, he caught Anna's eye and gave her a small nod. Whether it was encouragement or pity, she couldn't tell. "Final performer, 2 minutes," the stage manager whispered, startling her from her thoughts. Anna's mouth went dry. She tried to swallow but couldn't. Her hands felt cold and stiff, terrible for playing piano. She rubbed them together frantically, trying to warm them up. "You look like you might run," came Maestro Harmon's voice behind her. He had returned from conducting the orchestra between solo performances. "I'm thinking about it," Anna admitted, her voice barely audible. Harmon studied her for a moment. "Do you know why I put you last in the program?" Anna shook her head. "Because after all the technical brilliance, the audience needs to feel something real." He glanced toward the stage. "Those young musicians out there, they play perfectly. But sometimes perfect is forgettable." The stage manager approached. "We're ready for the final performer, Maestro." Harmon turned to Anna. "Remember what we worked on today, and remember why you play." With that, he walked onto the stage to introduce her. Anna heard his voice addressing the audience, though the words seemed to come from far away. "Our final performer tonight is somewhat unusual," he was saying. "Unlike our other talented musicians, she has never had a formal lesson. Until yesterday, she had never played on a concert grand piano. She taught herself to play on a second-hand keyboard with broken keys." A murmur rippled through the audience. "I discovered her quite by accident, playing an imaginary piano on this very stage. She works, or worked, as part of our cleaning staff here at the National Auditorium." The murmur grew louder. Anna closed her eyes, mortified. Why was he telling them this? "Music education is a privilege not available to everyone," Harmon continued. "But true musical instinct, that comes from somewhere else. Tonight I invite you to listen with fresh ears to Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, performed by Ana Martinez." This was it, her cue to walk onto the stage. But Anna's feet seemed rooted to the floor. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. "Anna," the stage manager whispered urgently, "that's your cue." Somehow she forced herself to put one foot in front of the other. The short walk to the piano felt like crossing an ocean. The bright stage lights momentarily blinded her, but as her eyes adjusted, she could make out the sea of faces watching her with curiosity. The concert hall was completely full. Anna reached the piano and stood beside it, remembering at the last moment to bow as the other performers had done. The audience's applause felt hesitant, uncertain. They didn't know what to expect from this cleaner-turned pianist. She sat at the bench, adjusting her posture as Harmon had taught her. Her hands still felt cold, and she could see them trembling above the keys. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to find the calm center Laura had told her about. Tears filled Anna's eyes. I'm scared, Mama. Of course you are. Do it scared. We'll be there in the back row no matter what happens. After ending the call, Anna took a moment to compose herself before heading to the main concert hall. There, she found Maestro Harmon waiting at the grand piano, the same instrument she had played last night when everything changed. This piano has a heavier touch than the one in the rehearsal room, he explained. You'll need to adjust. Anna sat at the bench, running her fingers lightly over the keys. In the empty hall, with its rows of seats soon to be filled with audience members, the reality of what she was about to do hit her fully. I don't have anything to wear, she suddenly realized. For the performance, Harmon waved this concern away. Already taken care of. The wardrobe department found something suitable. He tapped the music stand impatiently. Now focus, we have limited time. For the next hour, Anna played her piece repeatedly, adjusting to the concert grand's touch and the hall's acoustics. Harmon's critiques were sharp but constructive, pushing her to refine her interpretation. More contrast between these phrases, he would say, or let the melody breathe here. By the time they finished, stagehands were already preparing for the evening performance. Harmon checked his watch again, a nervous habit Anna had noticed. The showcase begins at 8. Be backstage at 7:30. He hesitated, then added, You've made remarkable progress today. In the silence, she heard a distant shout from the back of the hall. Tu puedes, Ana. You can do it, Ana, her mother's voice. A few people chuckled, but that familiar voice cut through Anna's panic like a ray of light. She opened her eyes, placed her hands on the keys, and began to play. The first few notes came out stiff and mechanical. Her nervousness made her fingers heavy. Pressing too hard on the delicate opening phrase, she forced herself to take a deep breath, trying to loosen her rigid shoulders as Harmon had shown her. Gradually, as the familiar melody surrounded her, Anna began to relax into the music. She had played this piece hundreds of times on her broken keyboard in her imagination, and today on these very keys. The notes were part of her now. She thought of her grandmother, who had sacrificed her own musical dreams, but had planted the seeds of music in Anna. She thought of her mother, working double shifts to keep that second-hand keyboard when money was tight. She thought of all the nights she had played after cleaning shifts, her fingers still raw from harsh chemicals, finding escape in Chopin's gentle nocturne. As these memories flowed through her, something shifted in her playing. The technical corrections Harmon had drilled into her that day merged with her natural emotional connection to the music. The piece began to breathe and live beneath her fingers. In the front row, Maestro Harmon leaned forward slightly, his expression intent. She wasn't playing the piece exactly as they had rehearsed it. She was making it her own in subtle ways, finding nuances even he hadn't suggested. As Anna reached the challenging middle section that had given her trouble in rehearsal, a new confidence guided her fingers. She wasn't thinking about the audience anymore, or even about playing correctly. She was simply telling her story through Chopin's notes, a story of dreams deferred but never abandoned, of beauty found in unlikely places. The music rose and fell like gentle waves, each phrase flowing naturally into the next. Anna's body swayed slightly as she played, her face reflecting the changing emotions of the piece. This wasn't the technically perfect performance the audience had heard from the conservatory students, but it had something else, an authenticity that couldn't be taught. In the audience, Laura the violinist watched with a small smile of satisfaction. Beside her, other orchestra members who had initially been skeptical now listened with rapt attention. In the back row, Anna's mother held her brother's hand tightly, tears streaming down her face. As Anna approached the final section of the nocturne, time seemed to slow down. She didn't want it to end. This magical moment when she was no longer a cleaner, no longer an imposter, but simply a musician speaking through her instrument. The final notes hung in the air like a whispered prayer. Anna kept her hands on the keys for a moment after the sound faded, her head bowed, almost afraid to break the spell that had carried her through the performance. The silence that followed seemed to last forever. Had she failed? Had her amateur playing disappointed this sophisticated audience? Then a single person began to clap, the sound cutting through the silence like a thunderclap. Others joined in, and suddenly the entire concert hall erupted in applause. louder it seemed to Anna than for any of the previous performers. She rose from the bench on shaky legs and turned to face the audience. They were on their feet, a standing ovation. Anna blinked in disbelief, her eyes searching the crowd until she found her mother and brother standing proudly in the back, clapping until their hands must have hurt. Maestro Harmon had returned to the stage. There was something in his face she hadn't seen before, a softness almost like pride. He gestured for her to take another bow, which she did, still dazed by the response. As the applause continued, Anna noticed something strange happening in the orchestra section. Laura had picked up her violin. Other musicians were lifting their instruments as well. Even as Anna watched in confusion, they began to play, a spontaneous accompaniment to Chopin's melody. Harmon turned to her with raised eyebrows. A question. Anna understood immediately. He was asking if she would play again, this time with the orchestra improvising alongside her. She nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat, and returned to the piano. As she began the nocturne once more, the orchestra joined her, adding gentle harmonies that embraced her melody like old friends. Violins sang above the piano line, cellos provided a heartbeat below, and woodwinds added colors Anna had only ever imagined. She had never played with an orchestra before, had never even considered it possible. Yet somehow they followed her amateur playing, adjusting to her tempo and dynamics as if they had rehearsed together for months. In that moment, something shifted permanently in Anna's understanding of herself. She was playing with professional musicians on one of the most prestigious stages in Mexico, and they were following her lead. The cleaning woman who had practiced on an imaginary keyboard was conducting an orchestra with her fingers. The audience seemed to hold its collective breath as this unrehearsed magic unfolded. Even Maestro Harmon stood motionless at the side of the stage, unwilling to intervene in the spontaneous collaboration. When the final notes of this second, enriched performance faded away, the audience exploded in applause and cheers. Many were wiping tears from their eyes, moved by the unexpected beauty of what they had witnessed. Anna stood and bowed again, this time including the orchestra in her gesture of thanks. As she did, Laura caught her eye and mouthed two words. "Told you." Maestro Harmon approached the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have just witnessed something extraordinary. This is what music is truly about, not just technical skill, but heart and authenticity." He turned to Anna. "Miss Martinez, I believe this is the beginning of a new chapter in your life." As Anna walked off stage on unsteady legs, she knew he was right. Whatever happened next, she would never go back to being invisible. The music had always been inside her, waiting for this moment to be truly heard. Anna barely remembered leaving the stage. Everything that followed her performance felt like a dream. The continued applause, the congratulations from musicians who had regarded her with skepticism just hours earlier, the dazed walk to the area backstage where performers greeted guests after the concert. She stood awkwardly in her borrowed dress, still not quite believing what had happened. People she didn't know approached her with warm smiles and kind words. Extraordinary performance and so moving. "Where have you been hiding?" She answered their questions as best she could, still struggling to process the night's events. Yes, she really had taught herself to play. No, she had never performed before. Yes, she had been working as part of the cleaning staff until yesterday. Each time she shared her story, the reactions were the same. Surprise, followed by genuine admiration. These well-dressed concert-goers with their expensive jewelry and tailored suits were looking at her with respect. Not pity or curiosity, but real respect. Then she spotted her mother and brother pushing through the crowd, their faces glowing with pride. "Anna," her mother called, wrapping her in a fierce embrace. "My beautiful girl. Your grandmother was watching from heaven tonight." Anna held her mother tightly, breathing in her familiar scent of home and laundry soap. "I was so scared, Mama." "I know, but you did it anyway." Her mother pulled back, wiping tears from her face. That's true courage. Anna's brother, normally so cool and dismissive of his sister's piano playing, stood awkwardly shifting his weight from foot to foot. "That was pretty cool," he finally admitted. "Everyone around us was asking if you were really our Anna." "What did you tell them?" she asked. "That you've always been amazing," he said with a small shrug. "We just didn't have the money to prove it to everyone else." His simple words brought fresh tears to Anna's eyes. Before she could respond, a photographer approached, asking for a picture of Anna with her family. Anna's fingers ached and her mind felt stretched beyond its limits. She had never concentrated so intensely for so long. "Take 30 minutes, Harmon finally said, checking his watch. "Then meet me in the main hall. We'll run through your piece on the concert piano." As the rehearsal room emptied, Anna stayed seated at the piano, too overwhelmed to move. In a few hours, she would be performing in front of hundreds of people. The thought made her stomach twist with anxiety. A gentle touch on her shoulder startled her. It was Laura, the silver-haired violinist. "First performances are terrifying," Laura said with a knowing smile. "I still get nervous after 30 years. "I don't belong here," Anna whispered. "Everyone can tell." Laura sat beside her on the piano bench. "Let me tell you something about musicians. Many of us started with every advantage. The best teachers, expensive instruments, parents who could afford to nurture our talents. But some of the greatest musicians I've known came from nothing." She looked directly into Anna's eyes. "It's not where you start that matters. It's what you have inside." "But what if I fail?" Anna asked, giving voice to her deepest fear. "Then you fail," Laura said simply. "The world doesn't end." "But what if you don't? What if tonight is the beginning of something extraordinary?" Before Anna could respond, her phone buzzed with a text message from her mother. "We're so proud of you. Carlos from next door is driving us to the concert. We'll be there tonight." Anna's heart sank. She hadn't thought about her family attending. The idea of performing in front of strangers was frightening enough. But playing in front of her mother and brother, seeing their faces if she made mistakes, that was unbearable. "I need to make a call," she said to Laura, stepping into the hallway. Her mother answered on the first ring. "Anna, how's the rehearsal going?" "Mama, you can't come tonight," Anna said, her voice tight with anxiety. "What? Why not?" "Because," Anna struggled to explain. "Because I might fail. I might embarrass myself. I don't want you to see that." There was a pause before her mother replied, her voice gentle but firm. "Listen to me, Anna. Since you were little, you've hidden your music like a secret, playing only when you thought no one could hear. Tonight you step out of the shadows. Whether you play perfectly or make 100 mistakes, your grandmother would be so proud, and so am I." It was the first of many photographs that night. Anna with her mother and brother, Anna with Laura and other orchestra members, Anna with Maestro Harmon. As the crowd began to thin, Harmon pulled Anna aside. "There are some people I'd like you to meet," he said, leading her toward a small group waiting patiently near the stage door. He introduced them one by one: the director of a prestigious music school, a representative from a cultural foundation that provided scholarships, a wealthy patron of the arts. They spoke to Anna with genuine interest, asking about her background and musical journey. The school director, a dignified woman with kind eyes, handed Anna a card. "We have a special program for exceptional talents who haven't had access to traditional education paths," she explained. "I'd like you to audition formally next week." The foundation representative spoke next. "If you're accepted, we can discuss scholarship options. Your talent shouldn't be limited by financial constraints." Anna looked down at the business card in her hand, then back at these strangers who were offering her the chance of a lifetime. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Harmon suggested, the corner of his mouth lifting in a rare smile. "Say you'll consider it at least." "Yes," Anna whispered, then more firmly, "Yes, I'll come audition." As the group dispersed, Anna felt a tap on her shoulder. It was David, the pianist who had performed before her. "I owe you an apology," he said. "I made assumptions about you based on your background." "It's okay," Anna replied. "I made assumptions about myself too." He smiled at that. "Some of us are getting together next week to play chamber music. Nothing formal, just for fun. Would you like to join us?" Before Anna could answer, her mother appeared at her side. "My daughter would be delighted," she said, giving Anna a meaningful look. "Wouldn't you, Anna?" Anna nodded, recognizing her mother's gentle push toward this new world that was suddenly opening to her. "I would. Thank you." As the evening wound down, Anna found herself standing alone in the empty concert hall. Most of the audience had left, and the cleaning crew, her former colleagues, were beginning their nightly routine. She watched them for a moment, remembering how just 24 hours ago she had been in their place, moving silently through rows of seats with a trash bag and dustcloth. "Quite a view from this side, isn't it?" Anna turned to find Laura approaching, violin case in hand. "I still can't believe any of this happened." Anna admitted. Laura smiled. I've been playing professionally for 35 years. Nights like tonight, when music transcends technique and speaks directly to the heart, they're rare. She touched Anna's arm gently. What you have can't be taught, you know. It can be refined, polished, developed, but that connection, that authenticity, it comes from within. What happens now? Anna asked, voicing the question that had been swirling in her mind. Now? You go home and sleep, Laura laughed. Tomorrow you begin the work. Because make no mistake, there is work ahead. Years of it. I'm ready, Anna said, surprising herself with her certainty. I believe you are. Laura glanced around the empty hall. But tonight, just savor this moment. Not many people get to experience what you did today. After Laura left, Anna walked slowly to the piano that had been the center of her transformation. She ran her fingers lightly over the keys without pressing them down, much as she had done the night before when Maestro Harmon had discovered her. I thought I might find you here, came his voice from the side of the stage. Anna looked up, embarrassed to be caught once again. I was just saying goodbye. To the piano. No need for goodbyes, Harmon said, approaching the instrument. This piano isn't going anywhere. And neither are you, I hope. What do you mean? Harmon sat on the bench, gesturing for Anna to join him. I spoke with the director after the performance. In addition to your studies, should you choose to pursue them, they're offering you a position as a practice room assistant. He paused, watching her reaction. It would give you access to pianos for your own practice, plus a small salary. Anna's eyes widened. Are you serious? Entirely. Your life is changing, Anna. The question is, are you ready to change with it? She thought about the tiny apartment she shared with her family, the early morning cleaning shifts, the broken keyboard she had practiced on for years. She thought about her grandmother who had never had this chance, and her mother who had worked so hard to keep music in Anna's life despite their circumstances. Yes, she said finally. I'm ready. Harmon nodded, satisfied. Good, we begin lessons on Monday. We? Did I forget to mention? I'll be personally overseeing your technical development for the next few months before I return to Germany. He raised an eyebrow at her shocked expression. I don't make a habit of discovering raw talent and then abandoning it. Anna struggled to find words. Thank you doesn't seem enough. Then don't thank me, Harmon replied simply. Prove me right. When Anna finally left the concert hall that night, her mother and brother waiting patiently for her outside, the world seemed simultaneously larger and more accessible than it had that morning. The stars above Mexico City shone a little brighter, and the late-night streets hummed with a rhythm she felt in her bones. Ready to go home? Her mother asked, linking her arm through Anna's. Actually, Anna said, I think I'm just getting started. 6 months later, Anna stood nervously backstage at the National Auditorium once again, but this time, she wore a simple but elegant gown of her own, and her name was printed on the concert program. Ana Martinez, Piano, Student Recital Series. The past months had been the most challenging and rewarding of her life. Maestro Harmon had been a demanding teacher, pushing her technical skills to catch up with her natural musicality. There had been frustrating days when her fingers couldn't execute what her musical instincts wanted, and triumphant moments when technique and emotion finally aligned. She had moved with her family to a slightly larger apartment closer to the music school, where she spent long hours practicing between classes and her part-time work. Her brother had taken an interest in the cello, inspired by his sister's transformation, and her mother had proudly displayed Anna's first student recital program on their living room wall. Tonight was Harmon's last evening in Mexico, before returning to his orchestra in Germany. He had arranged this recital as a parting gift, an opportunity for Anna to show how far she had come. 5 minutes, Miss Martinez, the stage manager said, the same one who had called her to the stage 6 months earlier, when she was still wearing her borrowed dress. Anna nodded, smoothing her hands over her gown. Laura approached, giving her a quick hug. Nervous? The violinist asked. Terrified, Anna admitted with a smile, but a good terrified. Your teacher is very proud of you, you know. He won't say it, of course, Anna laughed softly. Of course not. The stage manager gave the final call and Anna took a deep breath. Tonight she would play not just Chopin but Bach and Beethoven as well, showcasing her expanded repertoire and technical growth. As she walked onto the stage, the audience applauded warmly. Many had been present for her debut 6 months ago and had followed her progress through smaller recitals and student performances. In the front row sat Maestro Harmon, his expression characteristically stern but with a certain anticipation in his eyes. Anna took her place at the piano, adjusted the bench, and placed her hands on the keys. Unlike her first performance, there was no paralyzing fear tonight, just a healthy nervous energy and deep appreciation for the journey that had brought her here. She began to play Bach's Prelude in C major, the same piece she had played for Harmon that first night, but now with a technical precision and depth that months of proper training had developed. As her fingers moved confidently over the keys, she caught Harmon's slight nod of approval. In the audience, Anna's mother watched her daughter with tears of joy. Beside her sat Anna's former supervisor from the cleaning company, who had given Anna's old position to another young woman in need of work, but had remained a steadfast supporter of Anna's new path. As the music filled the concert hall, Anna realized that this piano, this stage, this moment, they were no longer foreign territory. This was where she belonged, not because someone had given her permission to be here, but because her own hard work and undeniable talent had carved out this space for her. The cleaning woman who had once played an imaginary piano in an empty concert hall was now a serious piano student with a promising future. Her hands, once raw from cleaning chemicals, now moved with grace and authority over the keys. Her story had already inspired music programs in underserved communities throughout Mexico City, reminding everyone that talent can be found in the most unexpected places. As Anna finished her final piece to enthusiastic applause, Maestro Harmon rose to his feet, leading the standing ovation. Their eyes met across the distance, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. The challenge he had issued in a moment of curiosity had changed both their lives, hers in obvious ways, but his too. He had been reminded of why he had fallen in love with music in the first place, not for technical perfection, but for its power to move the human heart. Anna took her bow, her heart full of gratitude for the chance encounter that had changed everything, for the challenge that had stopped the concert cold and started her life anew.